Welcome to another pre-game Aftershock. Maybe we should call these four shocks or something. I'm not sure. But I am excited to have Daniel Sperry now with the Kansas City Stars, still doing a little bit with Last Word on Soccer, but he's got a real writer's gig now
Yeah,
in covering not only Sporting Kansas City, but the KC Current. Daniel, how's everything?
everything's going good, man. Kansas City is a wonderful time. This is like the best time of the year for Kansas City because it's not too hot yet and everything's nice and green, and it's still fun to get outside and do stuff as long as you're dodging the thunderstorms and the rain showers and stuff like that. But it's busy with all this now. I still have a day job, but the Star stuff is mainly freelance. But it's a blast to get out there and cover the women's game as well and really kind of dive in there. I've been, most of listeners, I think, have heard my story at least once at this point. But I've been around MLS for a really long time. I've loved the league and watched it for a really long time. As you can see, here's the 2012 thing. I've got the Clash scarf in the back there. So, we got a lot of I've got a lot of history with MLS and not so much with the NWSL. So trying to learn. Thankfully, I don't have to learn soccer, but learning the team, learning the players, learning styles and stuff like that for on the current side has been really cool. And I think maybe being a girl dad, it has me pretty excited about a lot of the awesome significant investments that their owners, Christian Angie Long, are making into the women's game that I think are not only transformational just in women's soccer, but in women's sports.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of been rumors about bringing an NWSL team to the Bay Area, and we have definitely a segment of our Quakes fan base, also Aftershock watchers that are definitely updating us every single time there's a bit of news around that. You are a Bay Area native. I know, like the people who got to catch you last year, joining us on the Aftershock on occasion. Know that already. But for those who are brand new to the Aftershock this season, give us just a little bit of your Bay Area background.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up technically Central Valley, but on of course the northern side of things in good old Turlock. Went to Pittman High School, so those Kaepernick supporters out there, you might know what that is. Our colors are actually green and silver, not blue and gold, as the documentary will show you if you've watched that on Netflix. So, or the documentary or movie, whatever it is about him. Funny story, quick story. My sister lives here, and she was wearing my old high school hoodie at a Chipotle in town and was waiting in line, and someone came up to her and said, "Wow, where'd you get the really cool Colin Kaepernick high school hoodie? That's crazy. What website's selling that?" And she's like, "Well, that's where I went to high school, so I bought it there." This is my brother's, actually, because my high school ones don't really fit me anymore. And the guy was like absolutely floored. He goes, "Yeah, I thought it was weird. The colors were blue and gold, right?" Like, no, definitely not. That's the rival high schools. But grew up in Turlock, grew up driving over, 99 to 580 to down in 680 down into San Jose for Earthquakes games at Spartan Stadium. Went to U.S. soccer games even there. They played China. They played Japan at AT&T Park back in 2006 before the World Cup. Watched Taylor Twellman do a diving header right in front of my face. So that was a whole lot of fun stuff. Just grew up doing soccer in the Bay Area. Went to Quakes games a lot in high school and college and stuff like that. So when I'd come back for the summer. So I thank the Quakes too for helping friends really get into MLS as well. There's a lot of fun stuff where some friends and taking him to an American Outlaws watch party for the World Cup in 2014, and like that kind of, all right, so that broke the barrier. Got him into Levi's Stadium for the Quakes' first ever thing there, the first ever game there. And lo and behold, the next season he ended up buying season tickets because he enjoyed going to MLS so much. So there's a lot of cool stuff that I have connections to the Quakes with, and of course to like my childhood growing up. I don't know how much fandom totally exists anymore for me, especially in MLS. I feel like I'm just a passive observer on the chaos train that is Major League Soccer at this point. But obviously still keep an eye on things going on out here, and maybe have still a few special followers too from that side of life, I guess.
And used to have a podcast with Joel Soria back in the day that I listened to before I got into the media side, the 2474 show. And It was one of the ways that I think kind of you and I
Mm-hmm.
and Joel kind of were able to connect with each other a bit at
Yep.
first, and it's been great to get to contact you and be more connected with you over the years.
Yeah, for sure.
So now, Sporting Kansas City, this is not the first time under Peter Vermees that they have struggled. The last time was about 3 years ago. There was definitely some issues in the back line, but this is a very different Sporting Kansas City side this year, and I don't think that they expected to find themselves in the portion of the table that they are in. What, from your perspective, has kind of gone wrong so far in Kansas City?
I think the number one thing you can point to is injuries. For me, I know it might be sound kind of like an excuse. I think fans out here don't want to hear it as an excuse, but the reality is, right now, as I'm looking at the availability report, they have 5 people that are listed as out. 2 of them are going to be out for the entirety of the season, and they are their 2 highest paid players at the 9 and the 10. I mean, you miss home run type players like Gotti Kinda and Alan Polito.
Right.
You can survive it for a stretch like last season and nearly finish first in the West. If you get a proper handball call that should have been called in the final game of the season, you're finishing first in the West. And this poor team was going to have to go through all those injuries that they had to deal with through the CCL campaign, which would have been even worse, I think, for them. So they end up finishing third last season, but they were without Polito, without Kinda for stretches of the year due to injuries. They went to both have knee surgeries on them. Polito's up front was very obvious what the issue was, and they went and had a major surgery there. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny window of opportunity that he might be back at the latter half of October. Like, I mean, we're at the point where he might be able to start joining practice like the week before playoffs, maybe, kind of a thing. Like,
Okay.
very maybe at a very best case scenario, even a Jordan Morris thing is almost what, how he kind of came back last season is almost entirely out the window with him. Gotti Kinda will not practice at all this year because his significant knee surgery happened so much later that the recovery time will take him out. So you're missing a 9 and a 10. You're missing, I think the back line, some of the elder members of the back line were not as ready. Andreu Fontes has kind of taken a bit of a cliff dive in terms of form from last season, where he was a Defender of the Year candidate. That was not apparent in the first games of the season. He got yanked for Courtney Ford, and then an unfortunate situation where Nicholas Easymet Marine got drilled in the side of the head by a Columbus Crew winger's dangerous headed challenge, broke his cheekbone and concussed him, and he's been out ever since. So then they had to turn to a U22 initiative guy who was playing with Maribor. Those who are familiar with the Europa leagues and the conference leagues of Europe know that Slovenian powerhouse FK Maribor has some pretty decent players that have come out of there. Robert Volodar was a signing from there, went there full time after going through the Eintracht Frankfurt Academy. He's played a few games, picked up a red card in Portland, so he missed the match against Colorado. Kyrie Shelton has been supposedly supposed to be their main striker, and I think there's been a bit of a calf injury that has hampered him being at full form, and even then at full form, he's not really much of a dangerous goal scorer.
Yeah,
We've seen
0
him
goals this season.
right, and we've seen him. We haven't even seen him really get a clear-cut chance himself to score goals, but I think what gave some people some hope, I think, was the fact that we saw the involvement and bringing others into the game that he is very good at over the last couple of games, and then he has a calf injury. So that's been the story for him. Is it seems like, okay, we're finally getting back into like the best version of Kyrie Shelton, a striker that we can get, and there's an injury. Johnny Russell's been injured since last season, has been playing through it. Graham Zusi's out with a thigh injury. A young player that probably would be getting time, Ozzy Cisneros, right now is out with a hamstring injury that he did in the U.S. Open Cup. I mean, it has just been a war of attrition for Sporting KC since the preseason, and they brought in 7 new players, and not just like 7, like they casted out 10. I think about 5 or 6 of them probably had less than 180 minutes in Major League Soccer last year. We're talking 7 brand new pieces to a team, and amid all that injuries, shortened preseason, 4 of them, including Nikola Vujnovic, who might have just torn his Achilles and was supposed to be a potential replacement and help at the striker position. So Nikola Vujnovic came in. Marinos Gionis is a young player that you'll they don't really have much of an option, so they'll probably see him on Sunday. And then as I mentioned, Robert Volader and a young left back named Logan and Denbe. Those four missed at least the first 2 weeks of preseason, if not longer for some of them, and they have just had to be thrown into the mix for day one. Vunjevic landed from Serbia after finally getting his green card on a Tuesday night. Wednesday went to a snowed-in practice. Thursday got a on the field practice. Friday they flew to Colorado and played Saturday, and he started and went 90 minutes. I mean, that's just the situation that Sporting have been in from the start. And as much as like what has gone on the field hasn't been pretty, and there's maybe some questions about why you're still playing certain players if you're Peter Vermees, I don't know how much like option he has with the way the injuries have gone and the current roster at its state. You know, you miss any team that's missing two designated players for the entirety of the season is going to struggle and be below expectations. When you have this type of injuries on the back end of it, there's just absolutely zero consistency that can roll through a lineup. And so it's been hard to piecemeal a lot and string a lot of good things and a lot of good performances throughout the year, because you know a guy will have a great performance and the next game he'll pick up an injury in the first 15 minutes and be out for 2 or 3 games. I mean, that's just been 2022 for Sporting Kansas City, and much like the 2019 season, I mean, I feel like this might even be worse as I was going through that one, because you know they started off strong. They were in first place in the West after 7 games, and they were making it to the CCL semifinals, and then the injuries all started to happen, and then players kind of started to fall out of form, and you saw some signs that they needed to make some changes. I don't know, like I feel like they've tried to do a bit of a roster overhaul, a mini retool this season, off season anyways, to try and bring in a lot of new faces and some younger pieces that they're hoping will be, you know, really full-time contributors here in the next couple of years. But when those are all of a sudden have to be relied upon way earlier in the plan, it just kind of it is what it is, and this is what we're getting, you know. And I don't know how much of it can be blamed on other than the injuries at the moment. There's might be little game management things, as I said, that you could probably point to, but at the moment the injuries have just seemed to absolutely decimate any hopes for this team.
Yeah, and despite you know, the soccer rabbi Mark Goodman, who's been on this show as well, predicting a 5-0 win against you guys in the Blue Hell last weekend. Sorry, actually, is on Wednesday.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. Sporting Kansas City comes away with a 2-1 win. Daniel Sperry with a couple really nice goals, but at the end of that one, Sperry and Fontes and, well, a lot of players actually got into a bit of a scrap when the game was, you know, almost well in hand. Now you're without Sperry and Fontes for this game. It seems like on top of everything else, that was not what Sporting Kansas City needed. What was Vermees's reaction to that?
He simply said, probably for the sake of not getting any fines, was it is what it is. There was Daniel Sperry kind of explained it as like he was trying to go in, and what set it off was Sperry going in and hacking down Nicholas Mosquita as he was getting ready to play the ball and take a quick free kick. The situation was Sporting Marinos Tiones was running with the ball upfield. The clock was literally 5 minutes of stoppage time. We're at 94:50, where he's got the ball at midfield. Lalas Abubakar
94:50 of a 5-minute additional time, right?
Right. So Lalas Abubakar hacks him down from behind.
Oh no, not Abubakar! I can't believe.
Yeah, I know, shocking, right? Drew Fisher's right there, and you know Drew Fisher, bloodbath game, right? He does not call the foul, and then Colorado gets the ball and they start heading upfield. Well, Sporting puts on a quick ticky-tack foul, and Shallowy goes to like step in and block. The guy Mosquito already kicks through. Daniel was trying to kick the ball away. He took it. Daniel said he took it way quicker than I thought he was going to, and he gets hacked on the leg, and it goes down. Lucas Estevez, the left back from the Rapids, already on a yellow card, already hated by Johnny Russell. for an alleged spitting incident in a preseason match between the two of them, and there was nearly a brawl in that one. And he comes through, barrels through the back of Daniel Shallowy. I don't know if Shallowy should have ended up on the injury report with like whiplash or something, because you should see the way in slow-mo how his neck and his body flops as he gets crushed. And Lucas Estevez crushed him. So he gets a straight red. This is 4 minutes after Aaron Trusty got a second yellow and was sent off. And then Fontes and former Sporting KC player Diego Rubio are like arguing and kind of getting in front of the referee. Rubio elbows Fontes in the chest in front of Drew Fisher, and Fontes just goes and grabs Rubio around the neck, and it looks like he shocks him, because Rubio literally just like arms tucked, timber falls, just flops to the ground. And so Fontes gets sent off because it's right in front of Fisher. VAR goes back and says Daniel Shallowy should have gotten a red card. I probably agree with that one. None of this happens. The game is over. None of this happens if Drew Fisher just calls the stupid foul on Lawless Abubakar. So I know that's probably what Vermees' point was in all of that. And the fracas that ensued is just a mess. But this is kind of what happens when I don't know if those who are not up on sporting lore, before the 2013 MLS Cup final, and a lot of that hatred and back and forth between RSL and Sporting KC, there was an incident, interestingly, in preseason that kind of created a bit of a brawl that carried over into regular season matches and to the MLS Cup, and the Sporting wins. And then it's like back and forth right between those two for like until like 2017, 2018, really. Like every single RSL Sporting KC game, I swear, was a red card fest. There was at least 1 to 2 coming. It's a brutal rivalry game. Kyle Beckerman and Roger Espinoza two-footing each other to death. So
not Roger.
yeah, or Kyle Beckerman. So it was just like that was the incident that set that off. And just with how competitive Colorado's been, the proximity, Courtney Ford talking all week about how he was like, they didn't believe in me anymore. They cast me off. I'm going to go prove them, kind of a stuff. And you have Diego Rubio, who's like, you traded me to a place that you thought was terrible, and now we're going to come back and get you. I think there's just this like kind of hatred for each other that's kind of slowly I guess rising, and it's been really kind of interesting to see. It kind of reminds me of I think for a stretch there, Earthquakes and FC Dallas just constantly were red cards against each other from like 2017 to like 2019, maybe even a little bit earlier there. But I just feel like those two always just kind of got into it with each other. All those games were always really feisty, even dating back to like the Goonies days. So some clubs get that. It's not like your quote rival. I think Minnesota would be considered a more of a rival, or even RSL at this point for Sporting KC. But Colorado's certainly making its way up the rivalry rankings with that one. So they will be without Andrea Fontes, which is great because Robert Veloter comes back from his 1-game red card suspension that he picked up a double yellow for the dumbest 2 double yellows that I've ever, not like dumb for Veloter, but just officiating, like you really don't need to give that yellow there. They gave him 1, and then there was one that had to be a yellow, so then he's sent off. It's just the consistency of MLS officials, and you just chuckle at it and you say, okay, whatever, fine, we're done with this. And so Veloter comes back,
which are way better than NWSL officials, so you must love that.
Boy, we are not going to get started on doing pro and NWSL, but Veloter will come back into the fold for this one. He's a very obvious placement. I don't know. Courtney Ford went back-to-back 90s, so I'm curious to see whether or not, just with his injury history, whether or not Sporting wants to push it another 90, especially with a big U.S. Open Cup match coming on Wednesday. So that'll be interesting to see who pairs with him. I know Nicholas Marine is listed as questionable. Peter told us he's still out for this one, but he's getting close to being back. Daniel Shallowy will be out. I think Roger will be okay. I have been told as of this morning, I know there's a fun COVID-19 issue with the KC Current, and his wife, Lola Bonta, is out under the COVID protocols. I was assured by Sporting Kansas City that Roger would most likely be okay to play and travel, considering all the information that they have. They said they don't know that. They said maybe that might change, but they're not sure. As of now, he's anticipated to travel. So Whether or not he plays is another thing. I assume that if he's traveling, he's probably playing, just given the rotation and stuff that they need to make ahead of that match against Houston on Wednesday. So they'll get 2 guys back from that suspension. Fontes, as in just a major miss in my opinion, just because of his form. They're only really the reason he was playing against Colorado was because Veloder got sent off in Portland, and so they're not, in my opinion, they're not missing anything there. Veloder still has some learning to do. Made some young boneheaded mistakes against Portland and just how kind of his marking and stuff as they got shredded on the counter, but still a high quality defender, very good player, really good passer for his age, and something that they like in that left-footed center back in that back line. So, and then of course no Shallowy. So your healthy forwards for this match at the moment seem to be Ozzy, or not even Ozzy Cisneros, Nikola Vujnovic. Goodness, sorry, I'm going back on here. Johnny Russell and Marinos Sionis seem like the only healthy forwards at the moment. I don't know that there will be anyone healthy that can play striker. I'd be curious to see if they called anybody up from SKC2. I know they did pull up.
They just
Julian
played. They just played
Vasquez,
last
so.
night. Yeah, they
Yeah,
just played
they
last
did.
night against Quakes too.
And they did not have any loanies. There were a few players that were missing from that too. So I'm curious. Well, it'll be interesting to see what the game day roster looks like. But they did pull in one kid from SKC2. His name's Julian Vasquez. He's a former RSL Academy product that has been really, really good for them in MLS Next Pro this year. And he was signed ahead of the Colorado match as like an emergency short-term loan addition to the team, and I believe it was renewed. It was announced yesterday that it was renewed for the match against San Jose.
Well, Daniel, I got to run. I know you do too. I really appreciate you jumping on. I know it wasn't easy for you this week to make the time, but you made the time, and I'm glad you did. Thank you so much for coming on the Aftershock, which maybe we need to rename to the Foreshock when we do these earlier episodes, like I mentioned before. But and then you're on a deadline. So normally we get a chance to get you onto the Aftershock post game, but that might be a taller order this time around. We'll have to see how that goes. But if we can, we'd love to have you, of course, on the show as always. So fans, remember, like, subscribe, turn on notifications to get notified of videos like this. I have one more interview from Vancouver that's going to come probably on Monday or Tuesday. And also, of course, we will have the post game show after the Quakes and Sporting Kansas City from PayPal Park. We'll probably go live with that post-game show right around 6:45 as soon as the people who are in the press box can get access to a room to be able to do that. And as always, join us from your cars on your way home from the game and make us your post-game show driving. Daniel, thank you so much for being on. It's good to catch up with you as always. And we will be in contact, I'm sure, during this game on the Twitter DMs.
We probably will, but yeah, thanks again for having me on. Always great to come on with you guys, and thanks for tuning in, folks. I will do my best to try and get in post game. We'll see how it all goes. If it's a easy write, then we might be able to get through it pretty quick. So we'll see.
All right, Quakes and Sporting Kansas City on Sunday. It'll be an interesting one. Someone's going to be trying to get out of the cellar. Daniel, thanks again. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.